I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
It is 11 Madison Park. I don't think that many other restaurants in the world could have done this shift. You can be yourself and you can feel comfortable from the moment you walk into the dining room, and you can feel comfortable and looked after in this environment.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale.
Gabriel Di Bella is the wine director at 11 Madison Park, perhaps one of the most coveted wine roles in the world. Born into a family of restaurateurs, you could say hospitality is in his blood. He joins me today to discuss what life is like working at the top of the grapevine. Hi Gabriel, thanks for joining me.
Hi Shanteh, thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's so lovely to be able to chat to you. I've got a million questions, but you're in Australia right now. Where are you joining me from today?
I'm in Sydney right now. We are in Sydney for the past couple of weeks, and until the end of this week, doing a little pop-up with Aria Restaurants.
Well, it's a beautiful spot to be with a wonderful team. Is this your first time to Australia?
It is indeed. It is my first time in this part of the world, and so far it has been absolutely a blast, especially thinking that this is winter compared to the winter in New York City. You can imagine how drastic the difference is and how much we enjoyed it.
I bet. And I'm sure all the Australians are telling you that it's freezing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you really picked an amazing spot working, right underneath the Sydney Opera House. How has the Aria pop-ups been so far?
It's been absolutely amazing. Almost overwhelming, receiving so much attention in a way, and the excitement of the guests joining us. Some people have traveled specifically to join us for one night. We had some guests joining us from New Zealand, from across Australia, flying in Sydney just to come and see what we do. And that's just absolutely mind-blowing and amazing. And the team at Aria has been more than welcoming. It's been a blast. It's been a blast.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. And I'm glad we're showing you some good hospitality. I mean, this is a wonderful opportunity for people to experience that kind of dining, especially as travel has been a little bit more challenging. But I want to talk a little bit about where you come from and a little bit about, your growing up. You grew up in a French-Italian restaurateur family. Tell me a little bit about what your childhood was like.
So my parents owned a restaurant over 40 years. Started as a really tiny Italian place doing only pasta, pizza. And then my father, who's definitely learning on his own, never been to any culinary school whatsoever, wanted throughout the year to really kind of level up a little bit and increase the quality both of the food and the service that he was providing in his restaurant with my mom. And so I grew up with that. Pretty much, I keep saying that, and it's not necessarily to brag about, but like the first time I actually walked on the floor, I was 7-year-old carrying one pizza at a time at the table because we had like a big football event in France at that time. So I grew up really alongside this transformation of the restaurant and this transformation of the passion and the improvement of the passion of my parents for all things hospitality, food, and wine especially. We were in the middle of France. My parents still live in this small city of Vichy. And you can imagine that in France, the wine lists usually are pretty French-centric. They went definitely the other side and had a fully Italian wine list. The only French wine on the list were a Bourgogne Aligoté to make the kir and a couple of champagne. So it always been extremely interesting to chat with guests about all wine things, and especially again, like when you're in the middle of France and you have French guests joining us in an Italian restaurant, they used to have French wine available and labeled that they recognize, an appellation they recognize. So guiding them and helping them to discover new things and going off the beaten path was a lot of fun. And so I've done that for most of my childhood. As soon as I had a weekend, as soon as I was on holiday, I will help out at the restaurant. My brother will help as well a little bit. So I kind of grew up really in that way, knowing that ultimately I will end up in this field, um, but I didn't know where, when, and how that will work out.
Incredible. I'd love to see a photo of you 7 years old carrying a pizza through the restaurant. I hope you have some memories like that. But did you ever find it, that you wanted to be somewhere else as a kid, that you wanted to be playing, or did you feel a sense of kind of responsibility and you enjoyed being around, the dining scene?
Yeah, no, I'd never had the feeling of missing out on anything. Again, like growing up in I want to say a restaurateur family, we never necessarily celebrated, I don't know, New Year. New Year's Eve wasn't a thing. New Year's Eve was like a busy day at the restaurant that we actually prepared for weeks in advance. All those celebration was actually happening at the restaurant with our guests, and then in family we will have a glass of champagne at the end of the night, or we'll have something like this. We will celebrate among us, but I never had the feeling of missing out, and I had so much fun. Like generally, I had so much fun on the floor, and on top of that, I mean, every summer when I was working, I got my salary, and at the end of the summer, I could buy myself whatever I wanted. So, yeah, I was extremely happy with the outcome and how it was working out. Like the interaction with the guests was almost more fun for me than going out and like ride a bicycle or like play ball in a way.
Sounds like it's a real testament to your parents as well, who obviously ran, a fun place to be, and somewhere exciting. And like you said, you saw all the benefits of that nice kind of salary package you could take home. But pretty amazing of your family as well. Like you said, to have had a more Italian centric list in you're right, in the middle. I had to look up Vichy because I was thought, I know that name, but I'm trying to think of, so west of Lyon. And so, to have a mostly Italian wine list, that is pretty amazing. Did you find yourself kind of describing, as you grew up over time, describing some of those wines to the people, or were you familiar with them?
A bit of both. Like, I was familiar with them because, again, having a big Italian wine cellar, we will drink Italian wine us on our own time, like on the family table, on the dinner table, you will have a bottle of Italian wine. So I grew up with them, and that is true that at the very beginning of my career, I will often for myself more than when I was describing them to other. When I will discover new wines, I will almost like compare them to what I knew, and therefore compare them to Italian wine at first. So especially thinking about Brunello and Barolo, those two appellations specifically have been a big kind of I don't want to say benchmark, but kind of like a good line to follow and to describe other things and compare to in a way.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, because unlike almost any other wines in the world, they're almost uncomparable to other varieties, aren't they? But you joined Tan Hermitage Wine School was straight out of working. What was that education like?
That was a blast. It was a blast. So this wine school specifically was the only one I applied. So I finished my my degree back in Vichy of hospitality, and like I knew I wanted to go a little further. I didn't want to jump into in a way the real world quite yet. I wanted to either specialize. I wasn't quite sure at the time if I wanted to specialize a little bit more in the kitchen. Knowing that I wanted to end up in the dining room, but having a little bit more of a background in the kitchen, or deepen my knowledge in the dining room. And I thought that if I were going to go in the dining room, the only thing I needed to really dive into, because it's such a big world in a way, is wine. And so I looked it up, and like the wine school that everybody has recommended me at the time was Tan Hermitage, who historically was the first wine school created in France over 30 years before I even joined the class. And so I applied there. I've been very, very fortunate to be accepted. But it was absolutely amazing. The first year, I remember after 2 days at school, you basically start school in September, obviously, and after a couple of days, you're sent into a stage to harvest, vinification, and those kind of things. And I ended up at Michel Chapoutier Estate, obviously in Tannermitage, which at the time was like the brand new winery. It is a very, really big operation, but Michel has also such a range of different things that he's doing, from buying wine to put his own label to the really tiny plot that he's going to harvest individually, ferment individually, and like all the thing in between. So I spent a month working at the winery over there and really learning first and what winemaking could be and what winemaking at Michel Chapoutier Estate was, and at a massive scale in a way. So it was really, really amazing. And then obviously being in a wine region like Tannermitage, like the Northern Rhone Valley, is extremely, it's a privilege in a way, because especially about 10 years ago now, it was the famous region already, but not as famous as Burgundy can be, or Bordeaux can be, or those one region could be in France. So when we were knocking at the door of winemakers, like nobody ever kept the door closed to us. Like they were always extremely excited to open the door, get us down in the cellar and test on the barrel, and come back maybe a month later and see the evolution. Like they were this agreed exchange of knowledge in a way from any winemaker, any producer in the area and us. And then I had the opportunity to travel a little bit. That was my first step during my first year in Monaco and at Alain Ducasse. I worked there over the summer, and they offered me a job as soon as I graduate. And for my second year, I traveled to London. I really wanted to learn a little bit more English and perfection my English, which is still not as good as I would like it to be. But so I started with Hélène Darroze. At the time, it was a 2 Michelin star within the Connaught Hotel in Mayfair. Beautiful wine list, and very much the beginning of where their wine program is at right now, which is definitely a world-class wine program. And really learning about what's the wine world outside of France. Because again, that's one thing. It's like I was saying at the beginning, talking about my parents' restaurant, is when you're in France, you're in front of French wine. And yes, there's some delicious and amazing things and etc. But as soon as you step out of France, and especially going in a city like London, like you're in front of like the wine from the world. It is really a crossroad of many wine regions and many styles. And it was the moment where really natural wild organic wine also was starting to really be a thing in a way, and something that I never experienced before and never really encountered before. So it was really an important time for me, those 4, 5, 6 months I spent in London. And then when I came back, I graduated and went to work in Monaco.
Amazing. So I didn't realize that you had that kind of opportunity to do in your first year and second year, to do so much work within the field. That's wonderful that that's part of the program that you're studying.
Yeah, it's a big luxury of this school. It's the only one in France that operate that way. So basically, if you do well, you leave after 2 years with 4 diplomas. So you have 2 diplomas from the Ministry of Education, and then you have the WSET level 2 and level 3, which are co-financed by the government as well. So it is really a privilege. Like it's this school definitely trained the person that I am right now and the professional that I'm now right now. But also, if you look at all the alumni from this school, like, I don't know, there is some, obviously at Alain Ducasse, there is some in Paris at the Crillon, there is the Claude Essence in 3 Michelin star in Annecy. There is, some of us are across France and furthermore across the world. and that is beautiful because that's a network that the school managed to really keep alive. And every year when they graduate their second years, they will invite as many people as possible to come and join into the party. So it is really a privilege to have been able to join this school and study at this school.
That sounds incredible, and I can't even imagine, being able to wander through the kind of Northern Rhone and like you said, have doors open for you and be received and welcome in like that. That just makes my heart beat a little bit faster. But I think it's interesting what you said in terms of the approach of when you travel and you're working as a sommelier, because I've always found that French sommeliers coming to Australia are so energetic about a world that they want to learn more about. And so their knowledge of France would always be unbelievable, and perhaps lots of other places of the world. But when they would come to Australia, they would be so enthused about learning about little small producers. And, there was a lack of ego, almost a real humility about a place that they hadn't quite discovered as much as they wanted to. And it really gave a lot of energy to sometimes the other Australian sommeliers that were like, wow, I'm so thrilled that you think so much of our wine here.
Yeah, no, I mean it's again like we grow up. I mean, like any people who live in a heavy wine producing country in a way. Italy will be kind of the same, and Spain will be the same. Germany, depending on the area, will be the same. But it's like we grow up with wine and with all those appellations that some people would like, I don't know, pay a fortune for. I mean, I had a friend when I was at a wine school who was born, raised, and grew up in Puy-de-Dôme. I mean, it is a tiny village for anyone who went to Burgundy, but it is this thing where we kind of live in those French vineyards and those French appellations, and we come across them like so frequently that as soon as we have an opportunity to like actually discover something different, something we never heard of, it is super exciting for us because that's showing us how it can be done differently. And then connect the dots because maybe there is someone in France that we never heard of, or back at our home country, whatever it is, that might do something similar to what we tested in Australia or tested in, I don't know, in California, in Oregon, wherever it is. But like it allows us to like connect those dots and understand the wine, the world of wine a little bit deeper. Especially that more and more the new generation of producers back in Europe, when they are young, like before taking over their parents' domain or anything like this, like most of them will go and train in the southern hemisphere at some point because like there is so many challenges also happening in different part of the world to learn from. It is very exciting, and unfortunately for some of the challenges, we're gonna come across them very soon, if not already, in Europe and in California. Have been dreadful in the past few years with the climate change. So all those things for me are kind of connected together.
Yeah, so much to learn and to learn from each other in your travels. I want to talk a little bit because you then returned to London after you finished your training. As we know, each country has a different culture in wine. What was the biggest or the hardest thing to get used to when you moved to London in terms of a wine culture? What struck you that was different to what you had previously known in France?
Probably two major things. The first one is of the love of British people for fortified wine, which I obviously never really encountered before. It's not necessarily a thing in France unless you come from the Roussillon or a specific region. And the second thing is the love for British people also to usually enjoy their white wine a little colder than I would have loved. So it was two things that I was trying to navigate in a way. One which was like, well, put your opinion aside and serve the wine as they requested it. And the other side was like to learn from all thing fortified and I mean obviously sherry has such a hard influence in a way in London, and there is such a big scene which was absolutely amazing to learn from. So those were definitely like two of the main changes in a way. But then after it was how international every single wine lists were, and that's just pure joy. I mean, I remember especially when I was in stage at the Connaught, in between lunch and dinner, we will check on internet which tasting there is in town, and we will take like an hour and a half, like run into the tube with a couple of other sommelier, and then go test for like an half an hour, 45 minutes, jump on the tube back, and get back to work for dinner service. But it's having like this amount of like tasting, having sometime an entire room dedicated to Australia for that matter, where when you never necessarily approach a specific vineyard, it's just the perfect luxury. It's like you have all the style pretty much in one room. Some of the most influential producers of a specific region, a specific country in one room, and you can just go and dive into it. So London for that was absolutely amazing.
Yes, I can imagine. It is such a mecca for everybody that kind of stops over and has to show their wares. So I can imagine that's pretty exciting. And I also can imagine it would make your days very, very long in terms of a big, long service, probably a few drinks after service, and then doing tastings in the day. No wonder you probably worked a crazy amount of hours when you were there. Tell me a little bit about how, which is, it's a rite of passage, isn't it? We all have to do those very long 100+ hours to find our boundaries. Tell me how Make It Nice Group, how did you discover that, and how did that come to play in your life?
So Make It Nice, I discovered it the first time when the show 7 Days Out. Oh, no, actually, no, I discovered it a little earlier than that. When I came back to London, so that was in 2015, I went to work for a chef called Marcus Waring. The restaurant was within the Berkeley Hotel in London. And at the time, the general manager was just coming back from 11 Madison Park. And so we'll talk often about his experience at 11 Madison Park. And for me, I was like, never heard of this place. That was back in 2015. In France, 50 base is kind of important, but not as important as it can be in some other countries. And so I start to look it up. I look it up online, and I start to look at the wine list, which was absolutely crazy. I ended up on an article talking about the team at 11 Madison Park, and like this person was a master som, and like this person done that and that and that, and like I was thinking like this is a step too high. I mean, I'm an ambitious person, but like I was first. This is New York, and as a fresh citizen, like that will imply visa and everything, but like also like those guys are pushing so hard. Like there's no chance in hell that will end up over there. And I kind of like brushed off that off the plate altogether and stayed in London and carry on in London and not even like applied. I didn't even give it a shot. And if I have one regret, is probably this one. I would have loved to actually like push myself a little bit and like actually applied at that time also. But then Netflix released 7 Days Out, which is a small show for anyone who's listening. If you work in hospitality, you ever open a restaurant, I highly encourage you to watch it. It's basically a series that shows and follows 11 Madison Park after being named best restaurant in the world, closing down and reopening for their first night. So kind of like the whole idea of the show is like the 7 days leading to a big event, and this big event being the reopening of EMP. And like, so I watched this show and like, I was like, oh my God, like it's impossible. I could not believe that a place like EMP could exist. I mean, especially a refurb is like, this restaurant is more than being beautiful. Like it's one of those places where you feel that everything has been thought through. So just already as an environment, as the dining room, as the service station, the wine cellar, the kitchen, everything has been thought through. Everything is where it should be. And everything almost has been designed for this specific environment. So that was really, really mind blowing. And then I worked in between for a company called Capri Holding in London. I just wanted to experience the corporate role in a way, and manage several venues, and I've done that for a couple of years, and in January 2019, it was announced in the British press and in the press across the world actually that Chef Daniel Hume will open a restaurant in London. And so someone reached out to me, someone that used to work with. It was like, listen, like the current wine director of 11 Madison Park, yeah, it's gonna be in town in London. They are opening a new place. Are you interested to meeting them? It's like, yeah, of course. Who would not meet them? I mean, are you crazy or what? So we had a breakfast with Cedric Niquez, who was the wine director of EMP at the time, and we started chatting over breakfast, and like it's actually funny because it's probably one of these only interview that I ever had in my life where it wasn't an interview. We sat down, we kind of like exchanged politeness in a way, and like and those little chit chat in a way. And then Cedric pulled his phone, showed me the wine list of 11 Madison Park, and then we started to talk about wine. And then we start to dive into the list, and I was amazed of how the list has grown already, and like how deep, especially with my love for the Rhone Valley. I mean, this list for Rhone Valley is just like it's crazy. Is the depth and the and the diversity of things that this restaurant has is really amazing, and it's a testament of all the team throughout the time. So I came across Make It Nice that way, and I ended up being offered the position of wine director to open this restaurant, Davis and Brook, in London, which obviously I jumped on this position, and that was kind of the beginning of the journey with Make It Nice.
Do you think that if perhaps your chat with Cedric was more of an interview, you would have been much more nervous and freaking out a little bit more?
Probably, but I think also, and it's something that's definitely true. That's definitely true. But they also the skill of Cedric, and it's it's something that I always try to do since then. It's like the way of looking at interviewing for your team. You're not looking at yet. You want something that's a high performer in a way. You want something that has the qualification and the experience and those kind of things. But most importantly, I mean, we're in hospitality. We need to focus on finding people that you feel the warmth, you feel the hospitality. You know, you know that you will have them in front of guests and they will look after the guests, and then we can teach them the technicality. And Cedric helped me to build my first wine program, and he answered the question technically speaking that I had, in terms of like, how do I do, I don't know, how many glassware should I order for the first glassware order for a restaurant of that side, and all those kind of things like that you can learn. But I think what Cedric hopefully saw in me was like this thing that I love to talk to people, and I love to look after people, and I love to like chat about diverse things, and hopefully that was kind of why the interview wasn't really an interview but more of a chat.
Yes, definitely. I completely agree with you with all of those things that you've said. It is true, and trying to teach the natural kind of way of letting people be at ease and relax and feel comfortable in your company is certainly something that you really can't teach. It is quite difficult. So it's wonderful that he made you feel that way. And in saying that, I'm sure he got the very best out of you and was able to learn all the things he needed to know. And you were very successful, obviously, at Davis and Brook. In 2021, you joined the 11 Madison Park team. That's a strange time to join a company in the midst of kind of a pandemic happening. How did that come about?
So basically, the restaurant Davis and Brook had to close down, unfortunately, at the end of 2021, sorry. And so I joined in March 2022, the time that the visa was all sorted out. But basically, when Davis and Brook closed, like I looked at what was in London at the time, and like any opening that I might have heard of at the time that was in the work, and like as exciting as some opportunity could have been, like there were nothing that was quite close to make it nice. And obviously, Eleven Madison Park, Chef offered me the opportunity to move to New York, which was a new city, and it's those kind of thing. Like if I didn't do it at that time, I don't think I would have ever done it at all. Um, Plus, it's Eleven Madison Park. It's like for me one of the mecca of fine dining, of hospitality, and wine. So having the offer on the table of like, yeah, pack your bag and jump on the plane and come and join us. That was really really amazing and exciting and yes, obviously it was a transition period at the time, like any restaurant. We were just off the pandemic. The restaurant reopened about 6 months before that, a little bit over 6 months before I joined, with a very different culinary approach, as you know. So yeah, it was a lot of challenges I had, definitely. But furthermore, it was the luxury of being able to stay within the company that I was in already. I mean, and carry on. I want to say embracing the vision of this company, the vision of Chef, and also the vision and the approach that this company has for hospitality and fine dining, which to me is very modern and very different to a lot of restaurants that I have experienced in my career, and still a lot of restaurants that I hear from very often.
And it's wonderful if you do find a group like that that has a culture and a wonderful kind of philosophy on how they treat their staff and their approach. It's kind of one you want to stick with. So I think that you definitely made the right decision there. I mean, it must have been amazing to be at the start of something so massive when Daniel decided to go all plant-based. What was the experience like of being a part of that story from the get-go?
Well, I was part of the story, but obviously afar, because the first time Chef told us that he was going plant-based was so at the beginning of 2021. And at that time I was in London, so we used to have those weekly Zoom meeting, as it was the trend at the time to all be on Zoom, but also it was very convenient for us between London and New York. And so Chef gather like all the upper management in New York City and the upper management in London, and we all jumped on the call, and Chef was like, I have something to tell you. We're gonna reopen the restaurant as a fully plant-based restaurant. And I think every single one of us, especially in London, our jaw dropped. Because as like straight off the bat like this, it is hard to comprehend. I think we all had the same reaction that anyone else has, and that some of the press had as well. Is like, why would you break something that's working? Like, you closed up the restaurant as one of the most successful restaurants before the pandemic, with an incredible team and incredible recipes, amazing wine cellar, amazing bar program, etc., etc. And you want to put all that at risk. So at first we were very apprehensive. But then Chef started to talk about it, and it started to all make sense. And like, Chef is someone that has had the chance to, within his industry, pretty much win every single award possible, like being best restaurant in the world, best chef, a bunch of James Beard Awards, which are very prominent awards back in New York City, like New York Times, etc., etc., etc. So, like, in a way, he's someone who is driven by challenges and is driven by having a goal that he is going to pursue. And like, he needed a new goal, and I think he knew that the team as well needed a new goal. Because since the restaurant was named Best Restaurant in the World in 2017, there weren't any more kind of goal, anything to kind of run for and after. So going into this approach was, before anything else, like a creative move. It was like, and it's so fun that I described that to guests as well. You had some novelist back in France, I think a few centuries ago, who would do a similar exercise when they would decide to write an entire novel and not use a single time the letter E, for instance, or another letter. And like that force creativity, that force you to challenge yourself. As soon as you remove something from your palette of color in front of you, like you have to challenge yourself of how am I going to be able to like avoid that altogether or recreate something that is close enough. And I always approach like this move at 11 Madison Park as being that is like how far can we go with fine dining, with cuisine, if we were to remove all animal product. And the political debate is never on the table. It's like this is never part of our conversation. Obviously, we are very mindful of the environment, and we want to be a better restaurant and a more responsible restaurant in that sense, like any restaurant in the world. But mostly, this was driven by creativity. It's like, how far can we go with that?
I love it. It's funny. When I heard the news, I was just like, yes, baller move, because I just thought, okay, first of all, I know it's going to be successful because you've got the best of the best working on it. But secondly, I thought, at that pandemic time, yes, it's hard because of finances. And, of course, that's going to be, on your mind. But it also was the time to reframe and throw the rule book out and see what could we do that's different and what can we change up that we perhaps in the past didn't feel the need to do. So I just saw it as this big baller move, and I thought like this couldn't be more exciting. Love it.
Yeah, no, that is for sure. That's for sure.
I've worked with vegan degustations and vegetarian degustations in the past. I always found that there was so much freedom because of the constraints of people not knowing what's classic and traditional. For example, you serve duck and people expect Pinot Noir. What's your approach in terms of the beverage offering that's accompanying that? Because as we know, in any restaurant, the beverages are designed to really enhance the overall experience, and the menu is a huge driving force of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you exactly touched on the right point. Is like, it gives us so much freedom compared to before. It is unbelievable in a way, because exactly like you said, like before you will have at some point a lobster, so you know what you're gonna pair with that. You're gonna have a foie gras, you're gonna pair with that. You're gonna have the duck, obviously, at the time. And even though Pinot will work absolutely amazingly, we tend to go to Shiraz or Syrah because they had this black peppercorn on the skin, and like I mean, it was just like a match made in heaven. It was just perfect and a no-brainer in a way, a no-brainer. But no, it's like it is really challenging for the kitchen as well, but it is extremely rewarding both for the kitchen and for us. But every single menu is a new menu for us. When before we will change one or two courses, obviously adapt the sauce and the garnish of whatever dish or protein with the season we were moving in. No, we are just creating. Like every menu is a blank page starting off, and like you say, like there is no classic, there is no rule book, there is no like I don't know Bible from whatever chef that you can go back to and like, all right, we're gonna do this recipe, or we're gonna make a twist on this recipe. No, pretty much everything we've done since the reopening are like new dishes that we came up with in a way that we developed, and the same goes for the wine pairing on our hand and the bar program as well for Sebastian. I mean, on the wine pairing, we never had that much freedom. It's like I always approach that in the way that if you think about it, a guest who is willing to come at 11 Madison Park, 3 Michelin star, fully plant-based restaurant, is already someone who's coming with an open mind. Because there is also an amazing restaurant in New York City, and they decided to come and give us a shot or come back and come and visit us, and but they are walking into the restaurant with an open mind of being willing to discover new things, discover new texture, new taste, or new recipes, new technique, etc. So the kind of the same will apply with wine. Like we don't have anymore those rules that you have to start absolutely in a way with champagne, and then you need to move into I don't know, Riesling, moving into a Chardonnay, moving into a Pinot, moving into a Syrah. Like, we don't have this progression anymore. Yes, some menu might mirror that because the way the menu is built up, you have this crescendo effect in a way. But if we want to put a white wine, then a red wine, then a white wine, then a red wine, or if we want to put a rosé in the middle, or if we want to put a sake, or it's like it's limitless. It's limitless in that sense. Having some beer in the pairing, we're very close to launch that, and like we amended the menu at the last minute. Unfortunately, I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, but like again, like there is no limit whatsoever, and the guest has no expectation in a way because they don't know what they are going to jump into. So they trust us fully in that sense.
Have you noticed a change in the clientele in terms of them being even more open-minded since you've gone plant-based? Do you see a little bit of a difference from, what you've experienced in other restaurants?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the biggest change we experienced was the demographic. We have a much younger clientele than we used to have, which is again extremely exciting because they have different expectation, and like they're different. Our guests now have even more an open mind than the guests before, in a way. Like, they are willing to discover new things. They are willing to dive into like an entirely a full-on cocktail pairing in a way, or things like this. Like, they are curious and they are willing to, yeah, again, take the risk to not like something, but they will give it a shot.
I think that's fabulous. And I imagine that very much, like you said, translates to also the style of wines that people are requesting. And I think it's wonderful that it's like breathing new life into kind of what the classic clientele of what we imagine goes to a fine dining restaurant is. And I think that just means that there's probably a lot of new energy in the room, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, definitely. The dynamic in the dining room changed drastically. I mean, we found that with the change of demographic as well, like things like, for instance, our playlist wasn't right anymore. Like, it was amazing for the quote unquote old DMP, a little bit jazzy, obviously Miles Davis focus, and so on. But like, we decided to change a little bit that and pump up the level of the music also in the dining room, and the dining room really feels very different, and it's even more of a party in a way, a dinner party in a way, than it used to be before. And like, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. And I agree that in a way, I mean, it's also because it is 11 Madison Park. I don't think that many other restaurants in the world could have done this shift. But because of the grandiose of the room, and because of the ballet of all the dining room team and everything, like, he makes such a beautiful atmosphere, and like a cheering atmosphere, and somewhere where, yes, it is a 3 Michelin star restaurant. Yes, it is a former best restaurant in the world, for whatever that means. But you can be yourself, and you can feel comfortable from the moment you walk into the dining room, as grandiose this dining room can be. And you can feel comfortable and looked after in this environment.
I love it. I think it's incredible, and it sounds like something that's got to be on everybody's bucket list to get over there and experience it for themselves if they haven't already. Certainly is going to be on mine. I want to know a little bit, just quickly, about what you love most about your job. At the end of the day, on a hard day or a particularly stressful day, what is the number one thing that just keeps you coming back?
There is two things that are really, really close to one another, so it's hard to say that this one is more important than the other. But definitely the team. I mean, seeing the team growing, like, we obviously, I mean, when the restaurant reopened, they had to start from scratch. I mean, it's a brand new team. Beside a couple of people, or 2 or 3 people that were here before the pandemic, like everyone is like brand new. So seeing them growing and seeing them succeeding in a single position and getting promoted, and then struggle a little bit and get better at it, more comfortable, and then crush this position and then move again further. That is really rewarding and so much fun. But then the other thing is like the guest, and like seeing how much fun the guests have, and like having some of our I would say old regular who didn't like experience the new EMP yet, coming on their own will, in a way, making themselves a reservation, or being the guest of people who made the reservation, and like giving us a shot. And by the second, third course, looking at you, and it's like, I can't realize that, I can't imagine, I can't understand why I didn't give you a shot sooner, in a way. It's like seeing them like changing their mind in a way, and like enjoying themselves, and it's amazing. It's really rewarding, and it's a privilege. Like, it's a privilege to work in an environment where the entire team is excited to be here, is passionate to be here, and guests are like as equally excited to join us. It's mind blowing.
Yeah, I agree that it's the people, isn't it? The people that make, each day different, and give back so much for what you put in. I think that's wonderful to hear. And I mean, you have an amazing team there, so I think that's just awesome. I want to know, if you could only drink 3 beverages for the rest of your life, what would they be and why? And I'm interested to see what you have to say, because I was looking through the list and absolutely frothing on some of the cote-rôtis you have. Oh my good God, on the list. Oh, the jamais list. Oh, but I thought it'd be interesting to hear. And I know that it's a very hard question for a sommelier, but if you could only have 3 drinks today, what would they be?
I will probably start with Negroni. I guess that's the Italian side that's speaking here. And it's definitely my drink of choice pretty much any night when I go out after a service. Jean-Louis Chave, Hermitage Catlin, 1990 wine will be definitely, yeah. So I was born in 1991, which, as you might know, in France, it is not a good vintage, beside for some Champagne and the Northern Rhone Valley. And Jean-Louis Chave is like probably one of the producers that I follow the most, in a way, obviously, like studying in Hermitage, and like, I mean, the number of like bottle of wine I drank on the Hermitage Hill, looking at the vineyard, looking down at the vineyard, is incredible. I mean, I don't even know how many of them, but like I never had the chance yet to open a bottle of Catlin 1991, and so yeah, that is both my unicorn porter, and yeah, that would be something that, yeah, I could drink for the rest of my life. I bet I could. And then the last one would be probably green chartreuse. I love my green chartreuse, especially VEP. It is also something, it is such a versatile liquor that obviously you can have neat, you can have with a little bit of soda. What I love to do also in the winter is a hot chocolate, and you put a few drops of green chartreuse in it. It's just delicious and comforting in a way. So yeah, those 3 would be that, I guess.
That says so much about you, and you've wrapped that up beautifully, because we've seen the French and the Italian side of you and the heart of where wine all started for you all come full circle. I can't think of 3 drinks that really wrap that up better than those. So that's beautiful to hear, and I've never had a hot chocolate with chartreuse, so I am going to try that.
There you go. Please let me know how you find it.
Gabriel, it's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast. It's lovely getting to know more about you. I have a million more questions, but we're going to have to leave it there for today. Thank you for joining me while you're here. I hope the rest of your time in Australia is wonderful. I hope you get out and get some sunshine, maybe even dip your toes in the water, and enjoy the rest of your time in Sydney.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me today. And yeah, I'm definitely going to enjoy the last few days in Sydney, and will definitely dip my toes into the water.
Perfect. Cheers to you.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram at overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.